gotta tell somebody.
This is the best thing I've ever seen.
That. Let's talk about that.
You need this. Listen to this.
Memorable and exciting.
Well, then be less boring.
I'm going to tell everyone. Wait here.
Mighty remarkable, Big Daddy. Remarkable?
Remarkable.
Welcome to Remarkable, a podcast for B2B marketers that deconstructs the most iconic moments in film, television, pop culture, and advertising for a single purpose: to give you, the B2B marketer, the same storytelling techniques that the pros use. In each episode, you will learn techniques from Hollywood, Pixar, Marvel, and beyond, from Spielberg's hands to yours, bringing remarkable content ideas to you every single week. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. This is Remarkable. This week, we're talking about marketing lessons from 90s indie rock. With the help of our special guest, DataArt CMO, Scott Rayburn. Scott, how are you?
Doing well, Ian. Thanks so much for having me. And I'm really stoked to talk about two of my favorite things here today, marketing and indie rock, and perhaps a connection between the two.
Oh, more than perhaps. Zooming out here, why the heck did you pick 90s indie rock to talk about today?
So I think it's a bit of a identity thing. It's a personal interest, right? Like before I was a marketing leader or a husband or a dad, a couple years ago, that's been really fun. But longer than all those things, actually, I was a music nerd. I was a huge, just like indie rocker, kind of semi-obscure, pretentious music snob, whatever you want to call these fine folks. That was me. And, it spans a lot of genres from many different decades. But 90s indie rock, I think, is kind of the most famous or like ubiquitous decade of that genre or grouping of genres. And, I thought it would be fun to talk about. When I picked it, I did not realize how much there was to learn about marketing from it. But thinking more, I think it may be a very good topic.
And do you still partake in indie rock today? Do you buy stuff? Do you listen? How do you consume these days?
So I certainly do. No secret that I'm still, collecting vinyl records and going to shows at small venues. But it's not quite what it used to be. Like I'm more of a weekend warrior these days. I'm buying like 10 records a year instead of 5 a month or whatever that was. And just, like everybody else, consuming a lot of it through Spotify. Learn a lot about new artists on Reddit, so it's kind of been digitized more than like the physical experience that I kind of cultivated more in my youth.
And there's like a day that's a big day in vinyl world. What's the deal with this?
Oh yeah, so it's April. It's the month of Record Store Day. There used to only be one actually, but it became so popular that there's more than one. There's like a Black Friday Record Store Day now, maybe some summer version of it. Who knows? Whatever the capitalists have decided. But yeah, the April one was the first and still most famous one. And they will release kind of specialty limited edition. Like sometimes it'll be like a live record. Sometimes it'll be like a 7-inch that just has like a single. You can only get Record Store Day exclusive, or other times it'll just be like the 700th variation of a Taylor Swift record because she is, killing it with vinyl sales. And you can find all of that in Record Store Day.
What a day for us all to celebrate. Zooming out even further, tell us a little bit about your role as CMO of DataArt.
Yeah, certainly. So DataArt is about 5,000 people across, say, 25 or 30 countries. We're a global IT services provider partnering with everyone from kind of Fortune 500, Fortune 50, like very large enterprises, to scaling startups or more kind of niche, like verticalized SaaS companies. We have a very large client roster. It's about 400 companies there. And IT services is huge, by the way. It's important to note that we kind of specialize in what you might call emerging or digital technologies, including data analytics, AI, cloud, just, helping companies become more like technology companies to really take advantage of everything going on in the digital sphere. In terms of my role as CMO, I'm lucky to lead a team of about 50 people. I don't think I have a person in every single one of those countries that DataArt operates in, but I'd say we're in at least half. So yeah, 50 people, maybe 15 countries, globally distributed team, everyone from kind of campaign specialists and ad specialists to content writers to designers to, marketing operations. We've got it all, and we're mostly in-house. So, leading that in-house team is a lot of fun. It's a huge privilege. Personally, I get to focus mostly on demand generation, brand development, and then also a little bit of like the analyst and investor relations side of it.
Meredith, what the heck is 90s indie rock?
When I think about these sort of like music movements, I really like to get the context around it, like the broader picture, what's happening in the world at large, or at least like the music industry itself.
That is Meredith O'Neill, our amazing producer extraordinaire.
And sort of, driving forces behind it. And so when I was looking into it, it seemed like it was a reaction to mainstream music in the 80s, which was like a time of excess. It was super polished sounding and mastered and really dialed in. And so this is counter to that. So it's sort of like a counterculture movement. It's raw, it's rough sounding, kind of sounds like you're in somebody's garage. And is sort of against the sort of commercialism of the decade before. So I think of like grunge and alternative rock, like Nirvana, Sonic Youth, the Pixies. And by indie bands, I was like, what do we mean by like 90s indie rock? So like indie bands are bands that are just not signed to a major label. They might still be signed to a label, but like they might be signed to like Sub Pop was a really popular label in the 90s, Epitaph Records, XL Recordings, Saddle Creek Records were some of the more popular ones. Like, I know I mentioned Nirvana, which like they did turn mainstream, like they went mainstream, but their first album, Bleach, was released on Sub Pop.
Please welcome Sub Pop artist Nirvana.
And so there was also like this do-it-yourself attitude toward music. And especially with like the later 90s, the internet becoming more widely available, artists were able to start like releasing their music on the internet, like their own songs and albums without really needing to have like a producer or a label behind it. And when I was thinking about this, there's like one particular video that really came to mind that I thought really encapsulated the shift from like the 80s to the music of the 90s. Scott and Ian, have you ever seen the video of Kurt Cobain from Nirvana reacting to ticket prices from Madonna's tours?
No.
I don't think I have. That sounds like it would capture the moment though.
It looks like he's on some sort of talk show and he just looks like in disbelief.
Wow. Madonna charges $50, apparently. 50 to 75. Madonna wears fur too. Did you know that?
Yeah. We were talking about, we should charge $25 and really milk it. Yeah, really take them for all they got.
And then they go into this discourse over like how much they're having to dish out to like the venue. And then it's funny, they're like, Ticketmaster takes a percentage. And there was already that sort of like resentment towards Ticketmaster, which I feel like still exists today.
Some things don't change.
Yeah. And so I thought it was just really funny. It's like, yes, you're taking this like super commercialized, like Madonna touring to these really like sort of grassroots bands that are coming up sort of out of their garages and out of their basements to play for the people, And so if I were to take sort of lessons from this, when we relate it to content, I would think like whatever is commercial, whatever everyone is doing, like you want to work counter to that. I think you want to like create content that is just like anti-mainstream. So I would say like you can stand out by doing basically the opposite of what everyone else is doing. And then I would say let your content be more raw, less polished. And then you can even tap into like indie creators. And I was like, thinking about this, I was like, not even like influencers, like not people trying to influence people, just like creators making cool things with a larger following. And so I felt like those could be some lessons I would take from it. But Scott, I would really like lean on you too for talking more about this, 90s indie rock movement. One, like, you are dedicated to 90s indie rock bands. Can you talk more about the bands that you love and also like what you think sort of sparked this rise of 90s indie rock?
For sure. And let me say too, with Kurt Cobain, it's really interesting. He actually auditioned for an indie band called the Melvins prior to Nirvana, and he didn't make the cut.
We fired him because he was too screwed up to finish working on the record. That is the truth.
Which may have been kind of the best thing that ever happened to him because he, ascended with Nirvana, everything worked out. Well, I wouldn't say that about Kurt Cobain, but you know what I mean, for at least a few years there. And yeah, he's kind of one of those faces of the movement, which, went in many different directions. One of the things I love about it is just how diverse of a scene it is, from noise rockers like Unwound or even like Sonic Youth to kind of more kitschy, like lo-fi, catchy acts like Beat Happening or like Sebado or like Belle and Sebastian. Like all these bands are just very, very different and they all fall into this category. And it's kind of like a big tent party for different types of acts that all come together, like you said, in this movement of, kind of anti-commercialism, independence, authenticity. One of the kind of godfathers of indie rock is Stephen Malkmus from Pavement. And this dude is just known for being like the ultimate slacker persona, just like cool, like perpetually like a college senior who has like a lot of potential.
Steve Malkmus from the Jicks and Pavement and shit like that.
And now he's like, 60, and he's still touring the country doing this act. So, I think this ethos is something that I connected to, and by the way, I was like 11 years old when the 90s ended. So I didn't get into this stuff really till the early 2000s. And the 2000s, indie rock boomed. Like you had The Strokes, you had Arcade Fire, White Stripes. These bands kind of, the path was laid for them by the 90s indie rock bands, which had some level of success, but nothing compared to, White Stripes or Arcade Fire. They won a Grammy, things like this weren't happening in the 90s. Anyway, I preferred to associate with the more underground side of it, but, I'd be lying if I said I don't also love those more kind of mainstream indie bands. I think it's quite remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a question for you. You love vinyl. You used to, I don't know if you used to love it more or you love it equally, but you just have less time. But you used to really go to places and look for stuff and kind of find those, find records and look at stuff. And I'm curious, like, because there aren't indie bands anymore that scratch the itch of like trying to be underground and like find those new things. Do you feel like your love of vinyl sort of scratched that itch for you in terms of trying to unearth things? Because it kind of seems like it could be similar, but maybe completely different.
Well, I think unearthing things has changed a lot with the internet. Like, you had to try kind of hard for a long time with like internet forums and things to discover new bands. Then there was Google, made it a lot easier. Now there's AI, and you say, what are the new, post-punk bands I should listen to right now? And it will give you tons of options. Like, there's still plenty of options out there to listen to, engage with, kind of independent or small acts doing their thing that have come out in the past, few years. But there isn't that kind of movement around this scene like you got with 90s indie rock. I don't think you're going to get like, you remember those shows, I love the 80s, I love the 90s, whatever. You're not going to get that with like, I love the memes of the 2010s. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, you say that, but it's like, then you look at, best of Vine compilations and like,
oh my God. Yeah. I once spent like an hour watching Best of Vine, which is a long time to watch Best of Vines because those are 10 seconds each, but it was incredible. So yeah, maybe nostalgia will change and it'll just all be geared toward internet culture. And then maybe I'll just want to dive further back into vinyl so I can like touch and feel memories, right? I don't know. There's some philosophical track here, I think, is kind of what you're getting at, Ian.
Well, no, I mean, I think that what I'm getting at with indie was this love of the music, the love of the artist, supporting that individual or individuals that are actually making it. It's like, I like your stuff, therefore I'm going to support you. And sort of like, my dollars are going to support you, and therefore I own a little part of this, this person's life, their world, like is now mine. And I'm going to go to the shows and I'm going to support you, and I'm going to buy merch and I'm going to support that. I'm going to tell other people that I know this like crazy little band that I had their CD first, and, and I had the t-shirt first, and I was the one who found this. Like that was like part, and that's always part of music. But with indie rock, to your point, it's like, you're not going to hear it on the radio. You're actually going to be the person calling the radio to play the song, on behalf of and you're like, hey, you should check this out. This, I went to this band's concert. And I think that like, since we're not kids anymore and, we don't have all of our time to go find new indie bands to go be a fan of, that your priorities change, but sort of the love remains.
Yeah, I'd say the love definitely remains. I get like, I'll put a record on my record player once a week or so and enjoy it. But yeah, it is interesting how much the culture has changed with digitization. And yeah, I'm not trying to like trick some friend into listening to some really cool band anymore. There was a time when I was doing that quite a bit.
Well, so no, yeah, that's what I mean. And like, again, this is, I am married with 2 kids now, and I watch, whatever, Spidey and Friends, all the time. So my life.
Oh yeah,
exactly. So like my life is totally different. So, we're not passing around the aux cord in the car anymore. And we're not, going to a house party and someone puts some stuff on. But like my friends were like that. Like I wasn't like that. But my friends were like that. They were the ones who like, they wanted to play their CD that they just burned to show everyone, oh, I just found this new thing. And I feel like because it was indie, it was, like you said, it was also counterculture, but it was that much sort of stickier and that much cooler to be in the know. Somehow you're in the know, and that makes you cooler.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best friends I made in high school were the ones who actually thought I was cool because I showed them music. And then the ones who didn't enjoy that never became my friends.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's a great quote and look into Scott's life. I love that. But no, that's so true though, right? If you saw someone's whatever, Walkman or their iPod or whatever, and it was a band that you love, that like still to this day. I mean, if you go somewhere and you put on a song at wherever, jukebox, I don't know why I'm dating everything here, and you go put on someone, the gal will find you at the bar and be like, did you put this on? Oh my God, I love them. Like I saw them at Sprite Remix Tour, blah, 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 at Concord Pavilion. That's actually what happened for me. But you know what I mean? Like that's pretty magical, right? That's how you make friends. Like you said, it's... Yeah. I mean, one of my good friends on my marketing team right now, I've actually never met him in person, but we are exchanging, all sorts of recommendations, and, it's a lot of fun. And, he's over I think he's in Spain currently, right? So if you're watching this, Alexi, you got great taste in music, so that sort of thing, right? Those things connect people like very, very quickly.
What about, you mentioned Record Store Day, and I know something we talked about previously was building community. And aside from like sharing with friends the sort of songs that you're finding, like how do you feel like Record Store Day is like helping build community for these bands as well? And walk us through, like, what is this? If you've never heard of Record Store Day, like what even is this?
So I think the building community part, just to start there, kind of comes with the first element of Record Store Day, because I'll take you through it. If you want the best stuff, or the stuff that really interests you that's, very limited, you got to get there and stand in line for when the store opens at like 8 or 9 a.m., which builds community because you're surrounded by people. They likely have some similar, maybe fringe taste in music. However, I'd say over the years, Record Store Day has kind of changed toward the mainstream, where you'll get like Van Halen will have a Record Store Day release, or Black Sabbath. I mean, these are the classic rock bands. But then I also mentioned Taylor Swift. She's there. I think like Pink has been in, Record Store Days, when back in the day it was, some of those indie bands we were talking about almost exclusively. So yeah, what the day is, right? The local record store opens at like 8 or 9 a.m. They've got all the Record Store Day exclusive releases in a pile, in a box, whatever, like on a table. And it's allocation, right? So, they might only get 3 copies of one thing and 5 copies of another thing. And, if you're not there in time, if you can't go until the afternoon, you might be screwed. You might not be able to get what you want. Sometimes you get lucky. And then there's always one release that apparently was like exceedingly unpopular, and the record store doesn't sell a single one of those. You come in the afternoon, there's like 12 of something that you're like, yeah, why did they even publish this? It makes no sense, but somebody thought it was a good idea, some label. And then it also kind of jumpstarts the economy of records, because some of those exclusive releases might be going straight on eBay, or I don't know, somebody might drive across the town and try to sell it to another record store and be like, oh, now you can flip this. Which, by the way, I think these vinyl records also kind of speak to another one of my interests, which is, the economics of it, of collectibles in general. Like, I'm a big collectibles guy, baseball cards, vinyl. It used to Magic the Gathering too, why not? I'll just fully out myself as ultimate nerd in every direction. But, that's kind of what Record Store Day is all about. It's this community. And then it's also this kind of like, addition to your collection that is maybe a scarce resource, which makes it cool and can make it kind of popular as an event, which we see, all over the place with other sorts of events.
Do you have a favorite Record Store Day find or acquisition for your collection?
So I wouldn't say it was necessarily Record Store Day, but some of the finds that I can think of that are really notable. One time I just happened to find these 2 Miles Davis records. The one was Someday My Prince Will Come soundtrack with John Coltrane, which is just like, I didn't know how classic it was, but I grabbed it. And then also, I think it's called Sorcerer. It was another one that like, you just don't see these 2 records every day. And I got super, super lucky because I think they were like $10 a pop and someone didn't know what they had. I still have Sorcerer. I traded Someday My Prince Will Come for Mars Volta, Francis the Mute. And now it may sound like I'm speaking in a foreign language, but that is a great record. I'm happy that I made that trade. That's one of my favorites. And then one time randomly, I was in this thrift store and they had both of the first 2 REM records from the 80s. And those are great records and they were $5 a piece. So like this, I think, is before vinyl got a lot more popular and I was able to find these deals. These days, it seems like most people know what they have and the deals are harder to come by. I'm sure they're still out there somewhere. But yeah, a lot of that like crate digging for me has kind of transformed into like, I'm going to buy the special color release of the new record from a band I like Japanese Breakfast. Like I got the pre-order and it's like $47 for a splatter green, yellow, and gray vinyl. Not even a double LP, but just a single LP, right? And comes with a patch. And like things have changed a lot, just as a quick example. But yeah, those kind of early finds, the ones I mentioned were like really, really exciting. Like getting into the car with those was like, wow, like I can't believe someone let me buy these for those prices.
And it sounds like you go more for like the actual record and the music on it versus like the more novel, like a color, specific color vinyl or a little exclusive extra, like the patch. It sounds like you go more for like, oh, this is like a more rare find for a good price.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not fanatic about the colored vinyl. I have a lot, but it's not like the novelty factor driving purchases for me. It's usually like, this is a great record. Going back to love of just general 90s indie rock, I'm like, this is a seminal release and now I can own it myself. I get really excited about that.
That's cool.
That's cool.
That's super cool.
So, and do you listen to all of your stuff, or do you have do you have some that are just collectibles?
Nothing's sealed. There's like 500 of them, so I'm not listening to all of them every day, especially given I just revealed I only listen to like one a week. But yeah, nothing is off limits. I'll put on whatever. A couple nights ago, I was dancing with my son to Phil Collins, a little Phil Collins action. And that was just total bargain bin pickup. I've had people give me records they found on the side of the road. They're moldy. They've been in the rain. If you have any to give away, I'm in the Philadelphia area, come find me. But yeah, stuff like that, you kind of remember where you got them all. But yeah, I'm not someone who keeps stuff sealed. Even if I'm going to sell it, like I make a stupid mistake of opening it myself just so I can like check it out. It would have been worth more sealed, but yeah, I don't usually keep it sealed.
Meredith, have you ever done Record Store Day? And B, if you haven't, have you ever done an album release of any kind?
Ooh, I have done Record Store Day. I was living in Brattleboro, Vermont at the time, and there was one record store, and the guy, I would go in every once in a while, and the guy working there, he must be the owner of the shop because he was always there. And he's like got to know me well enough to be like, oh, you like this music? You'd probably like this artist that I would never have listened to otherwise. But I did Record Store Day there. And I forget what I picked up. There was an artist from Montreal that I really liked, that he had a copy of her album. And yeah, it just had some funny, like, not rare, but like artists that were really off the beaten path. And he always had recommendations for me. But there wasn't a super long line that day, but I definitely like was happy to wait. And it was a cool experience, just like people watch and see what was new. And there wasn't anything on my mind that I really, really wanted. But again, I feel like you can just go in and, especially if the guy working there knows what you like, just feel like, hey, what's new? What's good, and then they'll recommend whatever.
Yeah. Even if it's bad, if you listen to it enough times, you can still figure out a way to like it.
It's true.
Yeah. You can if it's music, right? You'll still find a way to enjoy it. Maybe. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Yeah. Kings of Leon had to grow on me. That was the first one.
Yeah, it was a little boring at first, and then they were like a huge international success, right? Yeah, they're not my favorite, but like, yeah, they've got some good songs.
I don't think I've ever done it, but I did go to the album release for the Ball Street Journal with E40, and it was at a record store in downtown Berkeley back in whenever that was, I think 2008 or something like that. And it was pretty epic to meet E40 and to have like this record store like completely packed, and he's like doing songs and just like all the people around the block and everything. But yeah, but again, it's like it's a moment that you remember. Record stores are just so cool, so that you remember where it was and what you did and whatever. I love stuff that's experiential. I love stuff that's physical. I love that things that are digital that we do that have an in-person experience. And I think that's sort of like my biggest takeaway from this is like 90s indie rock was really popular, because of the music, but also because of the culture and being independent. And, a way to, harken back to the days of youth or any type of nostalgia or anything like that. You can play the music, but also it's just cool that things like Record Store Day exist to celebrate eras of music. Obviously, it's not exclusive to 90s indie rock, but like there's a cohesiveness to that I think is very poignant. And it's interesting that you love that and you love this thing that inherently supports independent music stores, independent record stores. Like those two things are connected for Scott. And so therefore I think they're connected for me too, which is the type of person that liked indie rock is probably the type of person that likes independent record stores and probably would go to Record Store Day. So.
Yeah, thank you for the chance to talk about vinyl in addition to indie rock, because they're certainly connected. I believe also kind of connected to some elements of marketing that are quite important these days. Like there's some lessons learned here. Like, one thing is this authenticity that we were talking about with these bands. People can see through BS, whether it's like Instagram reel or a LinkedIn ad or an email campaign, whatever. Like it can still work. Your marketing can still work if it's completely polished and whatever. But I think, and I see from some results that, come from company work that DataArt is doing, you actually generally will get better results from the kind of authentic stuff. And this is kind of where you see brand maybe driving more revenue than demand generation, but who can actually count the dollars from brand? Well, not me, but maybe someone can. Let me know. So those conversations are happening. That's a big trend and relation. There's also customer lifetime value. Like, okay, these bands that started in the 80s are still filling up 5,000 person theaters today, or even 1,000, whatever. Like that's kind of a lucrative business model. So there's this connection between the authenticity and the, just kind of ethos and connection with people, the nostalgia, where I'm still going out of my way to, leave my new or adult life behind for a night and go see, Pavement and Stephen Malcolmus do his, 25-year-old impression and just sing these Pavement songs. They don't even consider writing new songs. They don't need to, right? So yeah, there's customer lifetime value. And then I think importantly too, there's this multi-channel approach, which is a huge part of marketing and content marketing. You notice they're all on Spotify. They all have websites. They all have social media, even if they're not making new songs. They need these channels to stay relevant, to sell tickets, to sell merch, e-commerce, right? It's all kind of tied to marketing. And, this is a tie between the authenticity and customer lifetime value. It's really activating that in a digital age. So those were some of my takeaways. I felt like it was time to like really say, guys, you were actually talking about marketing the whole time.
Ooh, yes.
I'd like to say we always are. I think that it's such an interesting point about authenticity. I think like inherently the motivations of an indie band are make something your audience loves. Inherently, the motivations of a corporation are buy our shit, right? Like, so in order to, wise person once said marketing is manipulation, right? But manipulation isn't always a bad thing. The way in which companies can be authentic and to be transparent and to connect with people is to do the same thing that indie bands are trying to do, which is saying like, hey, we're trying to make cool stuff for you because we care about you. Yeah, we want you to buy our stuff. Of course we do. Like, of course. We hope you buy tons of it. We hope you renew. We hope you upsell. We hope you, do all that stuff. However, there is part of us that just wants you to be better at your job or better people or have more time with your kids or, spend more time listening to music or going to Record Store Day or have some more money so you can go to Record Store Day and drop your next paycheck on whatever you drop it on. So, I think that like you can just sort of say the quiet part out loud a little bit and they're like, that's okay.
Yeah. Well, I think it comes down to having a quality product to kind of coincide with the authenticity. Like, DataArt, like we just got our NPS scores back, Net Promoter Scores. And we had 82% promoters overall, which leads to an 80 NPS, which is, let's just say, like, very good. So I feel like the authenticity and all this stuff needs to be closely related to product. And I feel like someone listening to this is screaming, product-led growth, right? Like, and that kind of, to a degree, I think happens in services, because I'm not in product world at the moment. I'm not in SaaS, but services product-led growth is just kind of like referrals, like people who are just really happy with the services you offer. For us, it's the quality of the engineering talent, the quality of the solutions delivered, the flexibility to deal with all the bureaucracy and red tape in a, Fortune 500 company, that kind of stuff. Yeah. But then if you try to create like a marketing campaign, a lot of the stuff I just mentioned is like not actually what you say. You have to show, not tell somehow. And those sorts of thought exercises and like content strategy, content marketing are really fun. Like brand building, one of the cool things we've done, we're called DataArt, right? So, thankful my founders of the company came up with a really good name 27 years ago. But, I'd say kind of more recently, we've been trying to capitalize on that a bit more. And, there's storytelling there. Like data, technical expertise is more relevant now than ever, right? AI, it's in every headline. It actually is like real, like you see it. Probably when you edit this podcast, there will be some AI involved, or not. I don't know.
There is. I can promise you that.
There we go. But so data, right? It's the technical side. But the thing is, like, that's been commoditized. Like, not anyone, but a lot of people can become an engineer in many different ways, and the quality varies, right? But this technical side, it's hugely important. But we think that maybe the art is even more important, right? The creative approach, the problem solving, the kind of partnership ethos of, being a client of ours. So to me, like, it's kind of that right mix of the authenticity we were talking about, because this stuff is true. We can back it up with facts, the NPS thing, the example that I gave you. But then there's the marketing, the branding, the storytelling, which, it's always going to be there. So yeah, it just seemed like kind of a relevant example to this whole conversation we're having.
Do you have any advice for how a company could be more authentic?
Start a podcast?
Hey, now.
Maybe. No,
that's a great idea. And I support that. You know what? Maybe even make it a video series. And
yeah,
I know a company who can help.
I think the number one thing I've noticed in content marketing is just the huge need to transition from the faceless, 1,000 word blog post to something that's more interactive. And it doesn't have to be a video series at all, actually. It could just be a quote with somebody's head. Like the quote with somebody's face on your social media post is going to perform 5 times better than the faceless, like 5 AI trends. But, if you do a really good job of the 5 AI trends, that can perform well as too. But you got to tag people, right? You got to put people behind it. And this, by the way, is coming from the perspective of someone who works in a people business, right? Services is a people business. You're working with people at the end of the day. So, showcasing our experts in all these different areas, from the blog posts to the podcast. We have a podcast called BizTech Forward. We're interviewing, season 1 was all about interviewing our people, like the experts in-house. Season 2 is kind of a hybrid between some people outside of DataArt and then, still quite a few people who work there and, are the key experts for the company. But, having that platform over time is going to enable more and more authentic, real conversations about the problems that we're solving for clients, the opportunities that we're helping them, unlock. And I just don't think you're getting that in static content anymore. And even if you are, it's probably going to get lost in the mix somehow.
Yeah, I think you just lose the human element to it. Like, part of the reason why I'm so interested in what Scott has to say is I'm interested in how Scott thinks about content and how it fits into his marketing strategy and how he convinces his leadership to invest in brand, to invest in content, to do all that stuff. Like, I'm not interested in like a listicle of how to get your CFO to invest in brand content. Like, I want to hear how Scott literally does it because that's interesting to me.
So, I think there needs to be kind of a healthy mix of, means to an end content and brand content, because we know with Google, Bing is more relevant than ever now because it feeds the OpenAI ChatGPT algorithm. So, that kind of optimization, the listicles of the world, for better or worse, still have a place in a lot of content mix if your ICP is coming through inbound. Fortunately for us, they sometimes are, so we can kind of tie those things together. But in terms of your long-term, company growth, you really do need to go to bat for brand marketing, storytelling, things that, may not have an ROI in Q2, right? To use those terms, positioning papers, just little notes like provocations of, AI is disrupting everything. Well, what are we going to do about it? Like those sorts of positioning elements of content. And they really come down to the brand and the value proposition. Those may not work very well for the type of content that's going to drive search results and, inbound leads or, demand generation campaign on LinkedIn and Google ads. So anyway, that's how I think about it. It's all this holistic mix, this multi-channel strategy. And I just hope there's not more channels because I think there's enough already for us to deal with as marketers.
The only thing constant is change. It doesn't, the crazy thing is there might not be more, but there definitely will be different ones. That's for sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I remember putting, I was preparing this plan talking about, Twitter, now X, trying to figure out the KPIs. And I just punted completely and said, I will not even estimate because no one knows what's going to happen with this channel. Right.
Well, and that's the thing, right? And that's the thing that you have to go to the CFO and he goes, well, what's the pipeline? You go, if I could tell you that, I would be rich. I wouldn't even be at this company. I would be monetizing a venture of my own making that could capture all of the value from my predictive knowledge of how to build a platform, build a revenue on a platform that doesn't exist yet. Like, that's the thing. It is an unknown thing. And, obviously you can operationalize parts of it, but marketing is inherently about waste. It always has been. It is, how much waste are you willing to tolerate in order to achieve your goals?
Yeah. How many arts and crafts without revenue will the company tolerate? And then if there's enough revenue, can we buy more creative? Like,
yeah.
Yes.
How many ads for the Honey Baked Ham Company have been served to people who are vegans? How many, people who, don't drink sodas at all get served Coke ads? Marketing is about waste. There's no way to, if you're optimizing it to 100%, then you're not going far enough, right? You that means you need to be reaching more people because, undoubtedly you're not reaching everyone. Okay, my final takeaway here on indie rock and by proxy Record Store Day is your job as a marketer sometimes is to just get people in line where they're bored enough and have to talk with each other. Because you think about how many times you met someone at a conference, standing in line for something, and you're just next to them and you start talking. And whether it's, going to a concert of your favorite band when you're getting a drink, or whether it's, waiting for a record drop and stand in a line with someone that you might just have a small something in common with that at least you could talk about that one thing. If you can do that as a marketer and get those people in a conversation, in a platform that hopefully you have provided and given to them, and hopefully given them drinks and food, then you're probably, on a smart path.
Yeah. And it helps if that event isn't attended by, 10,000 people, right? I think all the event marketers of the world just rejoiced when you said that, Ian. But, that takeaway is a great one, particularly in regards to a trend we're seeing with these kind of smaller, more intimate types of events, the ones with a platform for, 10-person roundtable or, kind of 20-person room, event at, say, a partner's office. Like, for us, that could be Microsoft or AWS. Yeah, the opportunities, the connections that come out of those are profound. And sometimes, marketing does get the people to come there, not just stand in line, but, we'll give you dinner, we'll give you a drink, It's not so bad, right?
It's not so bad at all. Scott, wonderful having you on the show. Final question here. What's a piece of advice that you'd give to other marketing leaders?
So, this is advice I kind of give myself all the time. And it's basically, you can't do everything yourself, right? So it's, build a good team around you, be T-shaped, because you're not going to be a marketing leader if you're not T-shaped. Maybe. Depends, but probably not. And try to create some way that, you can stay focused on your strengths and then lean on others, who have strengths of their own. Have this kind of holistically built type of leadership team. So yeah, that would be my advice.
Scott, awesome having you on the show. Thanks again. And for our listeners, go check out DataArt. Any final thoughts? Anything to plug?
Yeah, dataart.com. If you need help with your technology, if you need scale for your teams, if you're wondering, what the heck is AI, reach out to us. We'd be happy to help. And yeah, I really appreciate it. Ian, Meredith, it was a pleasure being here and looking forward to, following more of your podcast. It's pretty cool. It's good to be part of it.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Well, that's it for today. I hope you got some good ideas for your B2B content. Thank you for listening to Remarkable. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. Remarkable is created by the team at Caspian Studios, B2B podcast as a service. Caspian also creates fiction series for B2B companies, so if you want a business thriller, you can learn more at caspianstudios.com. Hollywood-style storytelling for B2B. And in today's episode, you heard from myself, Ian Faison, and Meredith O'Neill, senior producer here at Caspian Studios. Remarkable was produced this week by Meredith O'Neill, mixed by Scott Goodrich, and our theme song is Solomon by Falak. Be remarkable and rise above the noise.